Hello everyone, glad to be back. Today is 7th of June, now it's 10 o'clock in the morning, Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update today in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. There are quite a few very significant developments that you may find interesting, and I will start with Kherson region and the situation on the banks of Dnieper river. As you know, yesterday in early hours of the morning, Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant was destroyed, and as a result, water from Kakhovka water reservoir did flood the Dnieper river, and emergency situation was created as a result on the both banks of the Dnieper river. And according to latest news that we have, tens of settlements all along the river, including big cities like Novaya Kakhovka and Kherson, fully or partially were flooded, and some small settlements entirely went under water, unfortunately. Tens of thousands of people were evacuated from disaster zone, and unfortunately there is no exact information when and how these people will be able to return to their homes, if those homes even exist, because there were many videos on Telegram channels, for example, where you can see that water was destroying entire buildings, and situation, it's early to assess, but situation truly devastating in Kherson region. There are some glints of hope that soon water level will start decrease. And here, for example, we have RIA Novosti's report, according to which in Novaya Kakhovka city, water level a little bit already dropping, but still large parts of the city is flooded. And yesterday, if you remember, I did report that according to some officials from Russian side, water level in the Dnieper river probably will stay extremely high at least next 2-3 days, and then gradually water level will decrease. And by the way, we had also reports today that, and this is TASS News Agency's report, that level of water in Kakhovka water reservoir, which is in Ukraine called the Kakhovka Sea, this huge area is Kakhovka water reservoir, and according to Russian officials, water level did drop for 3.5 meters already in vicinity of Energodar, which means that all along this water reservoir, water levels are dropping by big margin. 3.3 meters. It's not final point, of course, and in coming days there are some reports that Kakhovka reservoir will become almost empty, which is devastating news for Zaporozhye region, for Kherson region, because agricultural land in this area were basically almost fully dependent on water supply from Kakhovka water reservoir and the Dnieper river. And of course, after Kakhovka reservoir will become almost empty, water level in Dnieper itself will drop significantly, and maybe it will be even possible to cross at some points crossed this Dnieper River by foot. That's how significantly water levels gonna drop in the Dnieper. But yet again, that's according to some estimates. When it comes to situation around this hydroelectric power plant that was destroyed, still both sides, Russian side and Ukrainian side, are blaming each other. But let's be honest, I mean, what benefit did Russia gain with this destruction of the power plant? Just nothing, isn't it? Not just nothing, but Russian side now will be forced to deal with very significant difficulties from civilian point of view and from military point of view, because we can probably, even though Russian Defense Ministry did not report about anything, but we can probably guess that all the defense lines all along the Dnieper River that Russian side had was basically washed away by high water, isn't it? So who gained from this development? Zelensky's regime. It's just too obvious. Second point, Crimean channel, which is supplying water to Crimea Peninsula, this Crimean channel is receiving water, or used to receive water, from Kakhovka water reservoir. And now when this dam here in Nova Kakhovka is destroyed, and water level in Kakhovka reservoir will significantly drop, there are some dangers that this channel, Crimean channel, will end up being on the highland, and water level will be below it, so that this channel may get empty. And you know how significant water supply is for Russian side and Crimean Peninsula in particular. As you know, since 2014, Kyiv regime blocked this channel, and Crimea, residents of Crimea were forced to, civilians were forced to deal with water shortages. And yes, Russian side did manage to deal with this issue, but there were still significant difficulties, because Crimean Peninsula is very strong when it comes to agricultural sector, and it consumes a vast amount of water, and that's why this channel, Crimean channel, is so important. And one of the first what Russian side did when they established control over this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia, they did reopen Crimean channel. And now, according to, yet again, some statements that we see in Russian media and in Russian language pages on different internet platforms, it's very much possible that if water levels in Kakhovka water reservoir will drop on extreme terms, then this Crimean channel will end up being above water level. So Crimea and residents of Crimea will be forced once again to deal with possible water shortages. So that's civilian side of this whole situation. Did Russia gain anything? Of course not. But Zelensky's regime and this regime in Kiev that was implemented by Washington and London and Brussels in 2014 were very keen to block Crimean channel and to create problems to Crimean residents, as much problems as they can, and including with in terms of water supply. So once again, you can see clear parallels between actions of Zelensky's regime and regime in Kiev in general in previous years and yesterday's event. So if anyone did benefit from this disaster, it's Zelensky's regime. So that's why there is no way I'm gonna ever believe that Russian side did destroy this Kakhovka hydroelectric plant to create for itself some huge problems. I mean, we are not in the movie, isn't it? And in real life, things don't work that way. And if you listen to Western elites, after all, it's just not even funny no more, because it's Russia that destroying its own pipelines. It's Russia that shelling its own territory with artillery, with drones, with everything it has. And it's Russia that now destroying dams to create problems for itself. I mean, that's too crazy, really. Even for Western propaganda, but that's the narrative that they are pushing, isn't it? I hope, I'm quite sure society all around the world, outside the Western states, will clearly understand what did happen, but I hope many people in Western states will also start asking questions, or starting questioning statements and leadership qualities of their own elites there. And by the way, one more thing about this Kakhovka hydroelectric plant. To be honest, I'm 100% sure that Russia has nothing to do with the destruction of this power plant, but I will consider two possible options, which is most realistic to me. In both cases, it's Zelensky's regime that can be blamed. First is that they did directly hit yesterday night this power station to destroy gates and flood Dnieper with the water from Kakhovka water reservoir. And that's one take. And second take, because Zelensky's regime was shelling Kakhovka, this dam here, and Kakhovka energo plant for many months, it's quite possible that maybe there was some damage, significant damage was done to these gates on the power station, and maybe yesterday one of them just break down, and after water start flooding, after water did find a way to pass this energo plant, then it was just a matter of time, and the entire construction will start collapsing. And maybe that was the case. Once again, I'm not an engineer, and it's hard to say what exactly did take place, but in both these scenarios, it's Zelensky's regime that was that can be blamed, because it's there that many times did shell this dam here and this power plant, and they were openly stating about it. And now, yesterday and today, they are very active officials in Ukraine to delay their own comments when they were very joyful when Ukrainian forces were hitting Kakhovka hydroelectric power plant. So that's my take on it. You tell me what you think, but yet again, there is no way I'm gonna believe that Russian side is so self-destructing that they did destroy this power plant to create some additional problems for itself. It's just this kind of stuff don't make any sense, isn't it? And that's why I'm surprised why Western elites, some representatives of Western elites, were so quick yesterday, for example, to start making statements and blaming Russia. I mean, it's just It's not serious. Serious people are not acting like that. But yet again, we are talking about Western elites, and there is no serious people among them. That's when it comes to situation around this disaster on the Dnieper and the Kakhovka water reservoir. And next topic is of course, and by the way, yes, Russian side did call for a Security Council in the UN to discuss this issue, and Russian permanent representative in UN, Vasily Nebezhny, did stated that Russian side considering this attack on Kakhovka water reservoir as a act of international terrorism. So that's a Russian take on it, and there will be investigation from Russian side, and I'm quite sure Russian investigators and independent investigators from the West, if they will conduct also investigation, they will come up with very similar conclusions, that it was there is only two options that I can see. It's first is that this hydroelectric power plant was directly hit yesterday night by Zelensky's regime, or second possibility that this construction of this power station was damaged because of previous shelling from Zelensky's regime, and yesterday just break down, and then this disaster occurred. But in both cases, it's Zelensky's regime to be blamed. It's just too obvious. And by the way, Tucker Carlson, one of the most famous US journalists, made his first show on Twitter yesterday, and one of the topics that he discussed was the situation around this power station, and he was very clear in his statement, and he come up with very logical conclusions that if anyone to be blamed, it's Zelensky's regime. So I guess it's not just Tucker Carlson in the West that will come up with this understanding or this kind of reading of picture. But if he is not afraid to make statements that goes against Western elites, I guess many others in the West will follow suit. And by the way, Carlson's program on Twitter was record-breaking, as I understand. Huge number of people did tune in and listen to his and watch his show. And I guess these kind of personalities that are very popular in US may play quite significant role to change or turn the tide in the Western society. Because as long as majority of society is just observing and not really doing much to stop this madness of Western elites, I don't think we will see any crucial changes. So yes, Carlson is back, and I guess his show will be #1 on Twitter, like it was #1 on cable network when he was making programs for Fox News. Let me continue now, and next topic is of course about this catastrophic failure of Zelensky's regime during local scale counteroffensives that Ukrainian armed forces, last reserves of Ukrainian armed forces, did carry out in direction of Zaporozhye region, especially between Ugledar and Gulyai-Pole, to take control, establish control over this land bridge, not a land bridge, but over this bridgehead that Russian side controls. And we had a statement from Russian defense minister yesterday, Sergei Shoigu, who said that during the 3 days of this local scale offensive operations of Zelensky's regime, Ukrainian forces lost, let me give you exact numbers. So Zelensky's regime lost more than 3,700 soldiers, yes, 3,715 soldiers killed and wounded, 52 tanks, 207 armored personnel carriers, 134 other military machinery, 5 airplanes, 2 helicopters. So as you can see, even if we take this information with pinch of salt, because it's this kind of times now that any information should be taken with pinch of salt, but still according to numbers that we are getting, this local scale counteroffensive of Zelensky's regime was total disaster, and I did say it yesterday and day before, because it was too obvious to me that Zelensky's regime cannot sustain such high losses for long. And if only in this one sector they lost about 3,000 or even more soldiers and few hundred military equipment, can you imagine what will happen if Zelensky's regime will start using all its reserves, all its last reserves that they have had accumulated in Kherson and Zaporozhye region? And we are talking about 50, 70, maybe 80,000 soldiers. That's the last reserves that they have. And if all those brigades, last Ukrainian more or less battle-ready brigades, will start conducting this local scale offensive in direction of Azov Sea to gain any foothold on this land bridge between Crimea and Russia, I guess it will definitely be suicidal operation for Zelensky's regime, and these brigades will they will be decimated. Those brigades will be decimated by Russian forces. And by the way, today early morning, military summary did made update. Dima from military summary did made update, and he quite rightfully so noticed that this situation around Kakhovka energo plant did occur exactly in time when Zelensky's regime suffered heavy defeat during its first stage of this local scale counteroffensives that are expected in the direction of Azov Sea. I don't know, maybe this is a coincidence, and probably is, but very same, almost very same in terms of shifting media attention did happen when Russian side established control over the Artyomovsk or Bakhmut. What Zelensky's regime did on the next day, they did conducted sabotage operations in Belgorod region, and entire media, not just in the West, but even in Russia, were talking about situation in Belgorod region, and attention truly was shifted from this decisive and huge victory of Russian side in Artyomovsk or Bakhmut towards Belgorod region. And now also world is talking about, and world media is talking about, situation in Kherson region because of this incident with the hydroelectric power plant, and almost nobody is talking about this catastrophic failure of Zelensky's regime in this first stage of local scale counteroffensive, when Ukrainian armed forces had just unbelievable losses. So who knows what is going on in reality, or in heads of Zelensky and his associates, maybe they did destroy this hydroelectric plant to shift attention. It's a possibility, isn't it? And you know, so yes, when it comes to situation on the front line, overall situation on the front line, Zaporozhye region, it's a disaster zone now, because left bank and right bank are flooded. And by the way, also one more very important point: left bank, which is controlled by Russian side, is on the low ground in comparison to right bank. So left bank will be flooded much more heavier than right bank. So yes, Kherson region is a devastation zone, disaster zone right now because of these floodings. Zaporozhye region is also quite, after a few days of this attempt to achieve any success in direction of this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia, Zelensky's regime, armed forces that are still loyal to Zelensky, almost stopped their activity. And by the way, yesterday late afternoon we had information that Russian armed forces regained control over the Novodonetsk here, which was for a few hours, according to some reports, under control of Zelensky's regime. But yet again, Russian side did retake control over all the territories that was under control of Russian forces before these local-scale offensive operations of Zelensky's regime began. So they did not gain anything at all. They just lost hundreds and hundreds of military equipment and thousands of lives. That's a clear indication that my prediction about all this story, all this campaign about Zelensky's counteroffensive is a will be suicidal mission if Zelensky will give such order to last reserves of Ukrainian armed forces to start activities on the front line in Zaporozhye region. And we clearly have indications that my prediction is correct. It will be absolutely suicidal for Zelensky's regime and Ukrainian armed forces. But yet again, we all know that Washington and London are demanding actions from Zelensky's regime, and I guess in coming days we will see yet again activization of Ukrainian armed forces in this direction. Maybe not only in Uglidar area, but also from Orekhova and Guliai-Pole. So, and you know my take on it. I did explain my reading of picture when it comes to question why Western elites are pushing Zelensky's regime to conduct this suicidal, basically, counteroffensive and to lose last reserves that they have. I have my reading of picture. I think I don't know. We do have constantly more and more subscribers, and maybe it's worth to repeat myself, but to say it shortly, I believe Western elites now want to bring this conflict to the end by dividing Ukraine between its neighbors, and to make sure that Western neighbors of Ukraine won't receive any significant problems from Ukrainian armed forces, especially Poland. I guess Western elites now are pushing Zelensky's regime to conduct these offensive operations to make sure that Russian side will destroy majority of last reserves of Ukrainian forces, and then once regime of Zelensky and Ukrainian military, Ukrainian armed forces as a more or less capable entity will start to collapse or cease to exist, then Poland, Romania, Hungary probably will enter western parts of Ukraine and establish control. And I guess if Russian side will take care of majority of Ukrainian Russian reserves, NATO member states won't receive any opposition from Ukrainian army when they will establish control over the western regions. They will have some difficulties for sure, because Nazi structures, Nazi battalions of Ukraine, some of them probably will survive, and they will fight, they will try to fight on the western Ukraine, but yet again it will be much easier for Poland, first of all, to establish control over the western regions if Russian side will take care of majority of Ukrainian armed forces. And that's why I think Washington and London now are pushing Zelensky's regime towards this suicidal counteroffensive. They won't get rid of Ukrainian army, regime in Kyiv, and Ukraine as a whole, because after this conflict will end, Ukraine will be divided between Russia and western neighbors of Ukraine. In previous videos I did spend a little bit more time to explain my take on this picture, but in few minutes that's what I think. That's the logic behind Washington's policies towards Ukraine. Let me continue now, and that's the logic that I see. Anyway, and we have RIA Novosti's report, according to which Russian forces are continuing to strike decision-making centers in Ukraine. We don't really have some specifics here, which decision-making center was targeted, but lately we do have this change of tactic from Russian side, because just a few days ago we did see reports that Russian side, first time since the beginning of this special military operation, did directly targeted headquarters of one of the state institutions of Ukraine, headquarters of military intelligence. And rumors are circulating until now, since that very day, that head of Ukraine's military intelligence, Kirill Budanov, was killed. I did not see any confirmation of this information, but for how many days now, internet is full of these rumors that Budanov is killed. So let me continue now. And Zelensky did made this is TASS News Agency's report, according to which it's 33 minutes already. Okay, I will go through headlines to make sure that this video is not too long. And the TASS News Agency is reporting that Zelensky did make statement that he has some understanding now how many F-16s Kyiv will receive and from which European states. Well, Zelensky is truly out of touch with reality, because Zelensky's regime, he and his associates, will not receive any F-16s whatsoever. And Western fighter jets will be introduced in battlefield only when Poland, Romania, and few other neighbors of Ukraine will enter this conflict to establish control over the western parts of this failed state. And I truly doubt that they will push eastwards, but they will definitely try to establish a no-fly zone over the western regions. And my guess is that exactly at that time, these western made fighter jets will be introduced to this conflict, and we may see some local scale incidents between Russian forces and NATO forces, because Poland, Romania, they are Slovakia, if Slovakia will also participate, and probably it will. These states are members of NATO, so some incidents probably will occur between Russian and NATO soldiers, but I don't think we will see any large-scale confrontation because, after all, I don't think Romanian, Slovakian, or Polish elites are suicidal. Because in any case of large-scale confrontation, of course, Russian side will make sure that ruling elites in these countries are neutralized. And Russia do have a means to deal with this issue. So Zelensky is mistaken. He's out of touch with reality because he will not receive any F-16s, even if Western states will say that they did deliver something. Of course, it will be under full control of NATO. These planes will be piloted by NATO pilots and will be maintained by NATO specialists. So Zelensky's regime will have no control over any Western-made fighter jets. Never. It's just impossible. Let me continue now. And yes, this is also significant. This morning we had some reports that Zelensky's regime did use long-range missiles to strike Tokmak and also Melitopol. Tokmak and Melitopol. There are some reports that explosions were heard in some other directions also, and Tokmak, by the way, is here. That's Tokmak. As I understand, quite significant logistical center for Russian side. And Melitopol is excuse me, Melitopol is here, almost in the middle of this land bridge between Crimea and mainland Russia. According to this pro-Ukrainian map, some other areas were also targeted by long-range weaponry of Zelensky's regime and by Zelensky's regime. But according to Russian side, air defense systems were working in that areas, and there is no reports about casualties on the ground. During the day, we will probably learn some more. Maybe some photo and video evidence will occur, and of course, I will share all the additional news on my Telegram. And by the way, when it comes to Telegram, let me share with you this story. Yesterday, Russian Defense Ministry did share this video footage, according to which Russian helicopter gunships are targeting, according to Russian Defense Ministry, Western-made battle tanks, Leopards, to be exact. But this footage did create quite a resonance in the internet, and that's why when I publish it, I did publish it second time, because first time I did believe that this was Leopard tanks, but then I see some comments that this is our agricultural technique, some combines, and I did delete first post, and then I uploaded second time with explanation that according to Russian side, this is Leopard 2 tanks, but there are some statements on internet, some discussions that in reality this equipment is some combines, harvesting machinery. Well, by this footage, it's hard to tell really what these machines are. And I hope Russian Defense Ministry will come up with the better footage, because it's quite unfortunate when state institution is sharing video footage. I do understand mistakes happen, but still it's unfortunate, and it's no good when official institution, Ministry of Defense, is sharing information and claiming something, and in reality it's something else. It's never good. So I hope today Russian Defense Ministry will come up with better footage, video footage, or with confirmations that Russian side did manage to destroy Western battle tanks. But anyway, who cares, man? We all understand that one day or another, these Western-made battle tanks, Leopards, Challengers, we all know that those tanks will be destroyed. So there is no rush, really. But because of this reason, I don't understand why Ministry of Defense did come up with this video footage, because no one is demanding that these Leopards to be, or Challengers to be destroyed in single day or anytime soon. They will be destroyed when time is right. That's it. So yes, strange things happened, man. Mistakes happened, and yet again, I don't know what those machineries are, but I did see on many channels reports that these are some agricultural inventory. So yes, let me continue now, and we have reports here from Governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, and he said that despite propaganda of Zelensky's regime, there is no Ukrainian saboteurs in Novaya Tavalzhanka, and basically he said that entire Belgorod region is under full control of Russian side, and there is no Ukrainian sabotage groups are controlling any areas in this region. And I guess Vyacheslav Gladkov, governor of Belgorod region, was forced to come up with such statements because Ukrainian side is spreading video footage with some individuals that are claiming that they are in Belgorod region. So according to Russian officials, no Ukrainian sabotage groups are in that region at this moment. Let me continue, and this is TASS News Agency's report, according to which Finland is planning to let me translate this. So Finland intends to expel 9 employees of the Russian embassy in Helsinki. So yes, one more unfriendly move from Finnish government, Finnish elites, and well, Russian side will respond exactly the same way. And well, all we can say is that I mean, it's truly sad that relationships between two countries did deteriorate in such a scale that it cannot be even recognized no more, because Finland had a good relationship. So Helsinki had good relationship with Moscow even during the Cold War era. And after Soviet Union collapsed, these relationships become extremely good, which was good for economies of two countries and societies of two countries. And just in previous few years, these current elites of Finland destroy everything, and they are continuing to do so. And why Finnish society is quiet, why they are not protesting this madness, I just don't understand, man. Truly, I truly don't understand, though. I guess Western propaganda is so powerful, in the West at least, that majority of people are truly believing in all that crap that they are seeing or reading from TV channels and on newspapers, that maybe majority of Western society become Russophobes. I don't know, man. But I truly don't understand what the hell is going on, and why Western societies are not active to deal with the criminal elites that they have. Because after all, it's ordinary citizens that will pay price for crimes that these Western elites are committing. It's too simple, isn't it? Let me continue. This is TASS News Agency's report. Also, once again, pure example of Western propaganda. Now, as you can see, Washington is still trying to somehow be active in terms of damage control when it comes to Nord Stream pipelines, because, as you know, after reports from Seymour Hersh, well-known, award-winning, and probably one of the best journalists of modern times, who is from US. After his reports, entire world knows now that it's US, Norway, and maybe UK and some other countries, but Hersh spoke about USA and Norway that were involved directly in this act of international terrorism on Nord Stream pipelines, and since then seems like Washington at the time did not realize how big of an impact it will have, this kind of action will have on reputation of the US. But then they did realize it, because world was really not very pleased that US is now committing acts of international terrorism and on such a scale. And by the way, they did hit not just Russian interest, but they did hit Germany's interest, which is should be, I mean, treated as a partner by Washington, isn't it? And since this realization come to play in Washington, they are trying to come up with some crazy ideas about this Ukrainian oligarchs and some Ukrainian citizens and some dumb yacht and this madness that some private individuals did carry out this extremely difficult operation, and they are continuing on this path. And now we have reports from Washington Post, according to which CIA did know that Kiev was planning to destroy Nord Stream pipelines before this act of international terrorism did occur. So once again, we are seeing here attempt to distance Washington somehow from involvement in this act of international terrorism, and they are now coming up with this kind of craziness that CIA knew that it was Kiev, you know. In few days time or few weeks or few months time, they will come up with continuation of the story that they knew that Zelensky was discussing this very same issue with his associates, and they will probably come up with some audio footage. It's very easy nowadays to create any audio about anybody, and even video with deepfake. But anyhow, no matter what kind of deception media campaign Washington gonna do, entire world knows that elites of US did fail, so much so that they are now operating as a terrorist organization, and they are committing acts of international terrorism against Russia, against not just Russia and other countries that US is hostile towards, but also against countries that supposed to be treated, as I said, like allies by US, because formally Germany is a US ally. Yes, I mean, it's a crazy, stupid attempt from Washington to somehow distance themselves from this whole story. They won't succeed, because world knows what happened. And this is gonna be last news for today. Little bit about economy, and we have information that South Korean tech giant LG Electronics, in attempt to somehow stay on Russian market, now are uploading Russian software, adapting its smart TVs that are produced in Poland for Russian market, and software was uploaded on the those smart TVs that supposed to be exported in Russia through means of alternative or parallel imports that Russia is conducting, or Russia is allowing to happen. So once again, we can see that even though on officially many these big names in world business are coming up with statements that they are shutting down the business in Russia and they are stopping operating in Russia. In reality, they are using any means they can to somehow avoid sanctions from West and still remain some positions on the Russian market. Because after all, man, Russia is 140 million people, even more. And Russian market is quite significant for many businesses, for all businesses really. And that's why it's not at all surprising that we constantly have informations like this, that Microsoft is trying to find out ways to stay on Russian market. LG Electronics is trying to do the same, and many other companies. And by the way, what is funny, some brands, well-known brands in the West, to stay on Russian market are creating new brands, especially for Russia. So it's a very same product that they are selling on the West that will be sold in Russia by different name. And this way they are trying to somehow avoid pressure from the Western elites. You know, they won't stay on Russian market, but in a safe way, so that they won't be penalized by Western elites. So yes, it's a madness, man. We are living in quite strange times, truly. So this is it for now. This is it for now. I hope you will find this update interesting, and if so, please hit that like button. Leave some commentary about any topic you like, and if you can, please share links to my videos or my channel with your friends on Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, or any other platform that you are active on. That will probably greatly increase my chances to reach wider audience. And if you think this channel is informative, interesting, useful, and deserves to exist, please consider to support with small donations through PayPal, buy me coffee, or by subscribing to my Patreon page. You will see links under this video in the description box. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.